In this video, I'm going to explain to you how you can actually find your dream job and how you can work towards it. I know there's a lot of dysfunction in the job market right now. Many people getting laid off, many people getting stuck in jobs they don't like. And I'm kind of here to help you really push forward in the right direction for you. So if you're new to the channel, I'm someone who's had proven success working at top finance firms, in investment banking and sales and trading, working on the trading floor of billion-dollar investment banks like Goldman's, Morgan Stanley and HSBC, as you can see here from some of my job offers. And we're going to go through a lot of useful information of breaking down what will help you find the career you're actually looking for and building that skill set so you could be your own boss down the line, even if you do start working at maybe another few companies. Now, given it's Black Friday, we have a 20% discount for the first 5 clients that want to work with me from the Monday 24th of November to the 8th of December. Feel free to click the link in the description, schedule a call with me, and I look forward to getting started with you. So let's go through this. Firstly, we need to think about what type of job do you actually want. Now, lots of people don't think about this. So what they actually think about is what is everyone else doing in your locality. So say you're living in London, you might think, well, most people go into finance jobs or some kind of financial services, so I'll do that. Maybe you have a friend group and they're going into law, or you have other friends who go to accounting type of careers because they know that's a stable career, or you go for the status jobs, which would be like consulting, management consulting. You really need to figure out what you want to do, because at the end of the day, you'll only have as much success as what will actually work for your personality type. So for example, if you're more focused on physical activity, then you really should pursue a career in that field. And nowadays, as much as people are complaining, like I say, about layoffs, AI and outsourcing, you can build a skill set where, okay, maybe for a short time you might have a lower salary, but you can eventually build that to become an expert and be able to market in and be self-employed in some sense. So let's think about that. Let's just say you prefer physical careers and you're like, okay, well, it's probably not high paying to work in construction. You can start off as maybe a low paid construction worker, complete some qualifications, get promoted up to management level, direct some of those projects. And also you could maybe do some work on the side as a handyman, as an expert electrician or construction worker. So you can help people develop their own properties. And you could also, I know someone who's done this successfully. When I was working at another investment bank, he worked in finance, but he was kind of well versed in doing a lot of manual labor because he came from a family who had that background. So when he invested in properties, and he owned 3 properties before he hit 30, and he wasn't on a particularly high salary. I think he was taking out quite big mortgages, maybe more financial risk than he should have. But he was doing a lot of the renovation himself, right? For properties on the outskirts of London. So he was getting a lot of rental income, and it didn't really cost him anything to essentially improve those properties, refurbish them. So that's a good example of how you can leverage different skills based on what your interests are and what you grew up learning, rather than just thinking, oh, everyone's going into the high paying legal career, I'll go and do that. So you have to first think about what type of person you are and how to leverage that. An example I often bring up on the channel is whereby some people, they essentially go into a career because they think it's going to pay well. So some people might be an introvert, but they go into a sales role because they see online or they hear going to sales and trading, become a salesperson, you get tons of money, and then they don't do well at it because they're not an extrovert. So there's no point fighting against your natural skill set to fit in with what everyone else is doing. I know when I was at London School of Economics, which is a top university in the UK, many people would just go into sales and trading and they'd fail time and time again for the interviews, but they'd keep going for interviews rather than applying for different jobs that might match their personality that they could have more success in, because they heard sales and trading as the type of career to go for, right? There's other things to really think about here is, are you picking a job based on your profit or passion, right? Because most people, they'll be thinking about, oh, well, like I say, what makes the most money? And if it's profit and passion, you can balance the two in the right way, right? There are people I know who, for example, they want to be a personal trainer for fitness, and they get paid very low salary in most gyms, right? But then they build a brand online, they can make a lot of money doing that. There's all types of ways of balancing profit and passion and what that balance is for you, right? So I know people who, for example, work in mental health therapy, and what they end up doing is they start working, doing some volunteer work, complete some qualifications, and then they balance the two between some kind of low paid mental health coaching and therapy for students and some volunteer work abroad, and they balance that with extremely high paying clients who are in the finance industry who hire mental health therapists. So at one end they're getting paid like $250 an hour, and at the other end, they're getting paid maybe $80 an hour or less, right? Because they prefer to balance the profit and passion, and they're self-employed. So this is a key example of how you can build your skill set, build a diversified client base. And even if you're just maybe working in any typical corporate career, you can eventually switch to being a freelancer, being a consultant, doing some work on the side. So it's all about thinking, what is your personality, what's going to make money, and what your key interest areas are, right? Because some people, they're going to be great at doing the standard corporate career, playing the office politics their whole life. Other people can do it, but they'd prefer to be self-employed and have more leverage themselves. Now, let's go through the next section. It's all about thinking things through carefully and doing your own research, right? What is a day in the life of that typical person in that job, right? Don't just assume, I'm going for a job, it's going to pay well. Well, it doesn't matter what the day of the life is, right? But if you can't sit down in silence, for example, or in a quiet environment for like 8 to 10 hours a day coding and becoming a computer programmer, and you just want the 200K salary, it's just not going to work out, because you're going to become restless, you're going to want to talk to people and things like that. What is the typical day in the life, and how does it differ from your typical day in the life? So for example, when I worked in some finance firms like Goldman Sachs, I personally liked to do like research, both at work, and had this natural personality when I was a teenager, doing research on topics, having detailed analysis, even things that just interest me on the internet that had nothing to do with finance. But I could leverage that into the workplace, having well-written emails, well-written finance reports and analysis. And it didn't bother me. I personally liked writing. I wasn't a big fan of maths and some of the kind of numbers type of analysis, but I could do well when it came to writing analysis. So that's something that didn't bother me. But if you're typical day in the life of that job, and this is what I help with through coaching, help people understand a bit more about what matches with them. If the typical day in the life doesn't work for you, you should think about that, right? If you're going to be in for example, a sales role, and it's not on a trading floor where you're sitting in one place, but you're traveling to meet clients, catching flights all over the world, living out of hotels. Similar for management consulting roles, they pay well, but you'll be living out of a hotel. Are you comfortable with that lifestyle? Is it going to be like, well, really you prefer to be in one location with whoever you're in a relationship with? You don't want to be traveling the world, even though it might sound fun to some. So you really need to think about what is the day in the life of that job. Next thing is, what is the estimated average salary in middle management? Because the truth is, people get salary capped, they end up at middle management. Not everyone makes it to managing director. And that's why when I help through my coaching, it's not only just how to get the best job. It's also about personal finance management, right? So you can maximize your financial freedom and your time freedom. So you realize that, you might not be the management favorite. You might not make it to managing director or partner level. And then you have to decide what life decisions you're going to make. Are you going to pivot to self-employment, balance your main job with a side hustle or investments in property? Whatever would work for you. The point is, if most people get salary capped at the mid level and end up as a vice president or an executive director, which is typically the mid-level type of role in a lot of investment banks, what is that salary in your locality, right? It's going to differ, of course, between New York and London, different tax rates, different places in the world. That salary level could differ. And would you be willing to relocate at that point? Maybe you are someone who's thinking, okay, I'm living in London or New York, you're getting paid, let's just say 200K. You want to get paid more and pay less tax. You might want to move to UAE for a few years, Dubai, places like that, Abu Dhabi, and I've helped clients in those regions too find jobs there, switch jobs there, on the basis of their skill set in the fintech industry particularly. The point is, once they can make those pivots, they can essentially lower their tax, increase their salary level, and not get salary capped at the mid-level of whatever the standard middle class type of job would be for a New York or a London in a corporate sector. So these are the type of things to really think through, right? These are the research you could do yourself, right? And I help with it through my career coaching. And what are the typical challenges? I mentioned travel earlier, but the other thing is long hours. I remember some time traveling back home quite late from the business district in London, which is called Canary Wharf. It's a bit like Wall Street in America. And it's kind of funny because you'd see people who might be well paid, some of the younger traders and salespeople in their early mid-20s, and they'd have really red eyes, completely red bloodshot eyes, because they'd been working so many long hours, even in investment banking, which could be 70 to 100 hours. And they'd be there traveling back sometimes, often. I remember one specific train journey where they'd be with their girlfriend. So whoever was their girlfriend was kind of being the supportive role when they were taking the train back home late at night. And, these guys were completely burnt out. So are you comfortable with long work hours if you want those higher salaries, for example? What type of lifestyle changes are you considering? Are you ready for the typical challenges around, say, office politics, travel, as I mentioned already, and what are the typical positions that work for you in terms of the roles? So let's move on. Now, the key thing is what role in that industry. Like I say, if you're more of an introvert, focus on jobs that involve research, trading, technical analysis. If you're more an extrovert, of course, you can be in sales roles, which can pay well. And the whole thing is about the long-term viability of those roles, right? Some people take roles in the back office, and I understand if that's what you can get, sometimes that's what you have to take. But are those roles being outsourced? Are those roles being moved to, say, India or Eastern Europe, things like that? What about in terms of languages? How are you developing your skill set to become needed at the company for a longer term basis? Like, let's just say you're working in Europe, or you're based in London and you're working with European clients. Can you speak multiple languages? Are you learning Italian, German, Spanish, different languages that are in demand in that area? Are you going to specialize? I know one co-worker I had during one of my internships at a data analytics firm. He was a African guy from Nigeria, but he spoke Russian, and he was also learning Chinese, Mandarin, which is quite a difficult language to learn. And he was based in London, so he obviously, of course, spoke English. And he was working in some kind of very technical financial analysis type of role. So this is how he built his job security. It's not common you'd hear maybe a guy from Nigeria move to the UK, and he wasn't like born in the UK when he was younger. He has quite a strong Nigerian accent, but he could speak Russian. He was learning Mandarin, and obviously he spoke English. So this is how he built his stability to get a job in London, to be able to interact with Russian and Chinese clients, which most people couldn't, and they wouldn't be able to connect all those particular areas of business. I'm sure he could go back to Nigeria and find a very well-paying job where they would maybe doing import-export business with Nigeria, between Nigeria and Russia or China. And most people wouldn't know how to speak all these languages. And more importantly, in a sense, navigate all these different business cultures. They'll just know one or two, and typically in the same continent. So this is how he built his long-term viability. You'd be in high demand forever. And actually, when I was at LSE, there are two people I remember who were kind of similar from that. They actually had an interest in China and Japan, even though they were from the UK or had African heritage. And when they finished university, they went to work for multiple years in China or Japan, and they learned some of the language before they went there. They had information on financial skills and trading. This is what I'm trying to tell you. Like, when you build that real skill set, this is how you can have that long-term viability instead of, worrying about AI every day, AI outsourcing. You don't want to be caught up in this media hype of, AI is taking over, people can't find a job. You need to think about how you're unique in your industry. Next thing is, what type of work is involved? Is it a low effort job? Is there a lot of admin involved? And this is something I can help with through career coaching, because I work with clients across different industries, everything from the gaming industry to engineering to finance and tech and many other areas. The whole point I'm mentioning there is that sometimes people don't know when they go into a role what it actually involves, right? Sometimes you might think it's going to be super fun and technical, or is it going to involve maybe 30 to 40% doing basic admin work, logging things in spreadsheets, emailing people in an outsourced location to do some work or fill in some documents? How much of your job is actually difficult? And the truth is, everyone wants a high-paying job that involves some level of low-effort work, whether it's admin, doing basic code fixes, some kind of maybe just basic analysis you have to do on a regular basis, maybe a monthly review. That helps because you do want quiet days, you do want slow days. Not everyone can work at 110% effort every day. So you should think about what percentage of low effort work is involved. And I know when I worked in finance, of course, in risk management and things like that, different type of roles, I knew, okay, this advisory team is going to be working longer hours, dealing with clients directly and different traders and salespeople. Certain monitoring and surveillance teams, they'd be working more predictable work, reviewing different cases of, let's say, trade alerts. That would be more low effort. It'd be a slightly lower pay, but more stable, unless they outsource the jobs to India, of course. But it'd be a bit more easier, like a stable 9 to 5, 8 to 6 type of job. So you have to think about all the jobs you're doing and to what extent it's actually low effort and you want that low effort, and also how you may be able to structure your day in a way you can leverage that, right? So I know some people might want to work from home because they want to put in less effort at work. They want to focus on a side hustle. You might be able to spend your afternoons not doing much work and focusing on a side hustle at work, maybe having a second laptop there, doing some market research for your business on the side. These are the type of things. And the other thing to consider is the infamous Karens, right? HR Karens. It could be Karens at work. What percentage of your industry is ran by women or liberals or whichever demographic you might not like? We don't have to go into it all here. But if there is a prevalent demographic and you notice, we see everything going on in society. I won't get into politics, race and religion and gender issues and things like that. But there's lots of tension between different social groups for a variety of reasons, between native populations and migrants and things like that. If you're going into an industry where you might be dealing with that tension and you don't want to be dealing with certain demographics, whichever that would be, then you have to really think about your long-term viability there. Can you survive there? Can you play along? Can you, hide your power level, if you're familiar with that term? Are you going to get triggered? Things like that. So I've mentioned on my channel, I had to work with a lot of liberals and feminists, which I particularly didn't like, but it could be different for you, right? You could go into construction and then, I don't want to go into different demographics, but, there are instances where construction could involve a lot of migrant workers from different parts of the world that you might not get on with based on your culture, differences based on you might not be comfortable with them taking some of the jobs from the native population. It really does depend. And you just got to think about what is the culture there, what is the lifestyle? Because I often say when you pick a job, you pick a lifestyle, you pick a career, you pick a lifestyle, whether it's long hours, different demographics, things like that. Now, I personally got on in the finance industry for over a decade and had success, as you can see at the start of the video. But, that did grain on me a bit, the type of, political ideology that was pushed and how easy it was to get cancelled for having a slightly different opinion. Now, the next thing is researching job descriptions and job postings, right? What is the niche? What niche areas are in demand? What locations are they mainly hiring in? Are you going to be willing to relocate? If you're living in the Midwest, for example, in America, are you willing to relocate to one of those major cities and pay the higher rent, right? What qualifications are typically in demand? Are they always looking to hire for a particular technical skill like SQL? Are you willing to learn it? How much does it cost to learn? Is it very expensive qualifications to complete? Will it pay off in the short term or the longer term? What's in demand right now? Are they looking for more junior employees or more senior employees? There are cases I notice where sometimes companies, I know there's a lot of discussion right now in the job market and on the internet about how there's higher youth unemployment, right? People, particularly men, but people in general, are coming out of university, they're coming out of college, and the level of unemployment is much higher. They can't find jobs. They're noticing a lot of the jobs that are hiring are for more senior people with mid-level experience. And I know that can change over time. Everything's moving so quickly right now in society. You could see higher demand next year. But I noticed, for example, recently in the engineering industry, there's instances where they are looking for a lot of people with mid-level experience and they overhired for junior people. And the profits haven't paid off in the last year or so. So they may be firing the junior employees, hiring more mid-level people, aging more senior people out through giving them early retirement options because they're becoming a bit too costly and they're not really needed. So there's all sorts of different trends in the industry. And if you're researching job postings and job descriptions, you're really getting a good idea as to what is in demand rather than what you're told is in demand, right? You should do a bit of research yourself, right? For job titles that fit the role, job titles at different levels. As I say, search for different job titles so you can see what is actually in demand in terms of the skill level at these different levels. Identify trends and skills required. Is there a particular skill that's in demand, particular knowledge area that they need? And then also you need to think about what different keywords and phrases are coming up. Like I say, what kind of technical skills they want, if there's some industry specific software that they're looking for. I know in finance, there could be a new trading system that everyone wants you to know. Typically, of course, if you go into trading, Bloomberg terminals are quite common, which are the standard, what you see on the news. If you're not familiar with it, that kind of colorful screen where they've got all the trading data, typically that's Bloomberg terminal that you're looking at, a particular type of software. And then also I want you to think about, what the typical skills are required versus what skills you currently have and what transferable skills you have if you want to move into a new industry that you're not currently working in. Next up, we have skill development. So what type of skills do you actually need, right? Do you have the qualifications? What is the type of qualification they need? Is it a degree that takes a long time? Is it a certification that takes a short time? Is it a high cost or low cost? When is it going to pay off? You don't want to be a person who gets some stupid liberal arts degree. You get a degree in history, you get a degree in English lit or gender studies, and then you can't get a job, right? You want someone who picks a degree that is going to yield with a relatively high paying job. I know the job market isn't as stable as we'd hope, but that's the type of direction you need to be heading in. If you have any other interest areas, you can always read a book about it, do a short course about it. Let's just say you're interested in English literature, things like that. You don't have to make that your main source of studying, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to earn a lot of money to survive in this economy. So think about what type of qualifications are needed. Think about if you can do online courses, which would be a crash course, so you could learn things, say, before an interview. For example, let's just say you're switching slightly between one area of tech and the other. You're going from a software engineer to working more on cloud architecture. You could look at AWS qualifications that could suit that. Different crash courses you could do that maybe take 8 to 10 hours. And maybe if you do that over a weekend and you've got a job interview a week after on a Thursday, you've got some prep for that. So you can easily pivot and explain some of the core concepts. Rather than having to go, oh no, I need to go back to university and do a whole year course. You could learn a lot quicker. One of the biggest areas for this disruption, people talk a lot about industry disruptors, like in the music industry, how Spotify and streaming services took over physical media like CDs. But the same things really occurred in education, right? People see how overpriced education is. You can learn things in a weekend where you don't need to spend like a 10-week course or a year course, like a coding boot camp. Do you really need to go to a coding boot camp when you can learn things for a fraction of the price yourself if you put more effort in? So those are the type of things to think through. The next thing is about experience. What type of experience are they looking for? And what type of experience do you have or need, right? So what are you going to focus on? Freelancing, internships. I mentioned doing 2 summer internships, one at a European investment bank, one at financial data analytics company. There's other internships you could do, which would be off-cycle. And an off-cycle internship essentially means that you have a 6 to 9 month internship that is not over summer. Perhaps you've graduated and that's the opportunity you could find rather than a full-time job. You prove yourself over 6 to 9 months and then they decide whether to hire you in a full-time role or maybe not, or they'd hire you at a later date for a full-time permanent job. So there's so many different opportunities here, and I'd really encourage you to kind of think that through. And the other experience you could get is at smaller companies. Let's just say you want to work in marketing. You might find smaller companies where you can work there part-time in their marketing department for a relatively lower wage while you finish your college or university degree. Those are the type of things to think through. This is all the basis of what you need to do to develop your skills. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about is portfolios, right? You need to prove you've got that dog in you, right? He's got that dog in him, if you're familiar with that phrase. So the point is how can you demonstrate your skills online? Now, sometimes it's easier if you maybe work in the tech industry to have a GitHub, which would be like a portfolio of projects you've done. Maybe you created your own algo trading system, things like that. You should link any type of evidence of work you've done. Typically on your LinkedIn, there's a portfolio section so you can demonstrate some work. Have a link on your resume, of course, to your LinkedIn, to your GitHub. And if you're not in tech, you can also have like a personal website for yourself. in addition to your LinkedIn or on your LinkedIn portfolio section. We have varied examples of things you've done, maybe proposal plans, case studies. If you work in finance, you can write some finance reports. If you work in sales, you can talk about some of your sales skills or the basic skills, sales frameworks, say MEDIC, things like that. There's different frameworks you could explain, give some examples of your structure for a sales call. I'm just giving you different examples to demonstrate that you can show your skill set online without it being a massive tech project of someone who works in tech, just so you build your own relatively small professional personal brand. So people go, okay, I want to hire that guy or that girl because she actually knows what she's talking about. And then the thing is around transferable skills. Now, there's often a debate about what you can say online about your skills, or what you can say in a job interview about your skills. Can you exaggerate? Are you lying? How can you rephrase things in corporate wording? And the whole point is, if you're moving from one industry to another, firstly, the second industry you're moving into won't know much about the other industry. And you can also always exaggerate, as long as you're not lying too much, or you wouldn't be able to do that in the new role. So let's just say you're moving from finance to tech. If you're moving from finance to tech, you want to give the impression that you were doing a lot of high quality work that maybe your manager was doing, or you were supporting the manager quite closely. And of course, the person in tech doesn't really know what was going on in the finance department, but you can exaggerate a bit. They're not going to really research and reference every little thing. So if you're covering the manager's role, rather than saying, oh, I covered for my manager, you say you maintained operational efficiency and ensured consistent service delivery in high pressure environments, which is what you would have to do in that type of situation. Maybe even if you're working retail and you covered for co-workers, you'd frame it in a very professional way. I took the initiative to uphold workplace standards, and I supported team performance beyond the assigned duties by covering for co-workers. Staying calm during difficult clients, maybe if you're in the sales industry, you resolved escalated client concerns using empathy, communication, relatability, problem solving under stress when the client was under pressure, and putting you under pressure. And the reason of all these examples is essentially to show you how you can explain relatively simple things like, dealing with a difficult coworker or difficult client or absent manager in a very professional way. This helps you stand out so you don't end up being like someone who essentially is just doing the bare minimum, right? And can't work in other parts of the industry or different industries. Now, the last thing I want to talk to you about is, I've had success across many different areas. And I just want to mention that, not to brag or anything, but to talk about the proven systems I teach within my coaching program, right? Here we have job interviews I've done at different hedge funds, at Arrowgrass, Citadel, CVC Capital Partners. I'm sure you've heard of some of these, at least Citadel. And these are quite big names. So I know the strategies that work and what it takes to find that dream job and maximize your income. Now, there is a sale on right now, like I say, 20% discount for first 5 clients. So jump on that if you're interested by scheduling a call. There's a link in description. And we are essentially talking about a career coaching program that lasts 12 weeks. I help you build power, pay, and freedom. Leverage all the skills I learn or I teach to help you navigate office politics, deal with girl bosses, difficult managers, difficult co-workers, help you with a job search with a professionally written resume, LinkedIn and cover letter, help you with a job interview, salary negotiations, everything to taking you into that job, getting promoted and pushing forward with your career. So there's a link in description for that. Let me know right now, do you have your dream job? How are you working towards your dream job if you want to do that? And I know people, as you can see through my little caption at the bottom of the screen, what's your dream job? NEET maxing, and NEET stands for not in education, employment and training. And a lot of people think, oh, the perfect job would be having no job at all. And I understand why people feel that way, particularly when inflation's difficult. You might feel like you're working hard and not pushing forward. But end of the day, what is the highest form of business, the highest form of living? In my opinion, it's having ownership over your time and your finances. And that comes from having that step into a successful career, which will give you the money to invest, which will give you that time freedom. So when you do invest that money correctly through having, say, a high paying corporate career, you can live life at a slower pace if that's what suits you. But the other thing here to note here, and this is something I teach, which is like the second level in my coaching program, whereby once someone has proven success, they can always leverage that to some form of self-employment, as long as they don't go crazy with their spending habits and they live within their means and they invest accordingly. They find a job they want. They work in that industry some time by doing their research, developing their skills. They work a role that matches their personality. So when they transition later into becoming a freelancer, a consultant, a self-employed person, they can have something that matches their personality, that they have an interest in, that they'll be in demand in their industry. So when they apply for job postings, look at job descriptions, they're always closely aligned with what's in demand in the industry through developing their skills and having a portfolio of expertise at top companies such as what I have here, right? And they have the transferable skills for all the different type of roles that might be in demand when they're working on a self-employment basis. So this is how you build the life you want, essentially, by becoming that expert, building that skill set, being in high demand, being aware of what's going out around in your industry. Many people talk about that in the dating market, what's in demand, what do women want, or what do men want, or whatever it would be, or what's going on in the political space, what's in demand, or there's more of a demand for, certain more controversial figures because people are fed up with the mainstream politics. But you should think about your industry like that and how in demand are you specifically. All things I cover within my coaching program. Link in description to work with me directly. I look forward to working with you soon. Let me know in the comments how you feel about this, and I'll see you next time.